Good morning, I'm Grant Flora, and it's time for the Coach's Corner Basketball Show on 93.7 FM The Mix and online at 937themix.com. With me this morning is student Zach Bowen and boys head basketball coach John Everingham. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, guys.
This morning to start off, we'll be recapping the matchup against Whitco that was nearly a week ago. It was a win for Wawasee and a pretty solid win at that. So, Coach, can you just kind of take us through what happened in that game?
Yeah, sure. We obviously were coming off a loss and had a full week of practice and really trying to focus on just getting better in certain areas. And I thought the Whitco game was good for us because I thought we were patient throughout the game. I thought that sometimes when you're playing a lesser opponent, the expectation is you're going to come right out of the gates and just blow them out from the very beginning, but that didn't happen, and I didn't think that was going to happen. Whitco's got a couple pretty good players that they're returning from last year's team, including 6'6" Kroll kid that we knew was going to be a bit of a matchup problem for us, and so I think we did pull ahead of them early on by 8 points or whatever in the first quarter. I don't have the stats in front of me, but from that point to about the middle of the third quarter, they played us pretty tight, and it kind of hovered around maybe 10 points or so. And I was really proud of our guys not losing their poise or not buying into some expectation that was supposed to be happening or whatever. We were just really focused on getting better as a team, and we got into a little bit of foul trouble, throughout the game. Zebarth, I think, picked up his third foul in the first half when he went to try to block a shot down there on the far end. And so we had to have some guys come off the bench and perform just a little bit when one of our main scorers was kind of out of the game. And so Carson Smith came off the bench and I think had 13 or 14 points. And Felger probably had his best scoring game of his career, in that game against Whitco. And so I was really proud of our other guys stepping up, and I think that's something that's going to be beneficial to us, moving throughout the season.
Kind of bouncing off of that, you were speaking of Felger and Smith stepping up. So what can you say about that overall performance, and what do you think of that?
Yeah, we've talked earlier this year about guys stepping into new roles, and so with Peyton Felger last year, a lot of what we asked him to do. He started probably the last 5 or 6 games for us last year, and just really just taking care of the basketball, and he hit a couple big shots last year when he was open, but we've never really asked him to take the ball to the basket or to be a scorer for our team prior to this season. So it's a bit of a new role for him to really encourage him to take the ball to the basket. He's got a nice little pull-up jumper, and he made a couple post moves, against Whitco that didn't surprise me, but it's something that not too many people have seen, out of him. So he's getting more comfortable with that role and playing, a four-man and also a guard. He's kind of that utility guy. And so I was really happy for him that he stepped up. I think he scored the first 4 points of the game. You could almost tell he had a little hop in his step, and again, he had a very energetic game, getting offensive rebounds and still doing some of the things that we know that he can do. I think he took several charges in that game, several big rebounds, and then scored 14 points. That was really big for us that he kind of came out of his shell just a little bit, and he's still going to keep getting better. And so with Carson, again, not having any varsity experience and was off to a bit of a slow start offensively, shooting the basketball and scoring. But we knew that he has some offensive weapons that we're going to be able to utilize as the season goes along. But it was nice for him to, the thing was I think he hit a three late in one of the other games, but overall his shooting from three-point range might have been 1 for 14 or 1 for 15, and even the one that he made against Whitco, if you remember, it hit the front of the rim, hit the back of the rim. It just wasn't swished right through the hoop, and I just remember looking at him after that ball went through, and he was just relieved. And sometimes when guys are in a little bit of a shooting slump, they just need to see one go through the hoop, and then it's off to the races. And I thought that's kind of what happened with him. He made that first one, And then he just started feeling a little more comfortable. The pressure was off in terms of, making shots, and it was good to see him come out. And with the matchups that we have with him, with maybe the other teams focusing on some other scores, he's certainly going to have opportunities to score, this year as the defenders may not be the best defenders from the other team. And so we're going to rely on him and Peyton and Colin Robertson to score some points every once in a while for us to be competitive in games.
Yeah, Coach, like you were saying, Peyton Felger, Carson Smith, Colin Robertson, they have the ability to be X factors for you this year. Most teams are going to watch film, and on the scouting report, they're going to see Miles and Maddox Everingham, Colin Zebarth as kind of the main scorers, and those guys in the backcourt that they're going to want to stop. But when Carson Smith, Peyton Felger are scoring, shooting well, getting inside, Colin Robertson, that's where you're going to be able to beat some teams that are tougher opponents, like in the NLC, and eventually when sectional rolls around.
Yeah, for sure. I think we got other guys too. Darius Lewis is a guy that I'm sure we'll talk about it, but he played last night for the first time. He broke his leg in the summertime and still recovering from an injury, but he's somebody that could provide some depth off the bench. And Weston Hofford has had some good outings on the JV in terms of shooting the ball and scoring a little bit. And Nolan Holsworth is another kid that continues to shine on the JV that can play as well. He can score the basketball a little bit. He certainly has the ability to defend. He's an athletic kid, and he's played a lot of basketball. So, it's not just about, some of those other guys, but I would totally agree with your statement that, we're hoping to be the team that you just can't focus on one or two guys, that if we move the ball well offensively, that we have a lot of different guys that can hurt you offensively, So we're still developing that, and that's kind of what the JV is for. And when we start seeing those types of performances, another guy, Weston DeLong, who had a good JV game last night against Warsaw, is developing as well. And so we feel good about, where our bench is at and where it's heading. I think that's important to probably say too, is that those guys have potential and they're getting better each week. They're working hard in practice. And certainly when we become, at full strength this season, you're going to see a lot of different people contributing off the bench.
Coach, you're kind of talking about that depth there and how it played a big role in that Whitco game. So how do you prepare those bench players to get into the game and play?
Yeah, I mean, it probably starts in practice, giving different guys opportunities with the first team. And it probably would be similar to, I don't know, that not that I've ever coached, in the NFL, but the guys that maybe the backup quarterback, the young guy that's been drafted in the first round or whatever, that's starting to get first team reps, and so, we try to mix in, different guys on our first team in practice and kind of see how they respond. See, the other thing that we don't talk a lot about, but, is team chemistry too, who fits in well and what role. And so, you may have somebody who's a little bit more of a scoring type player that maybe doesn't get quite as many minutes on the varsity because they just fit a particular role. And that's what, again, I talk about Peyton Felger a lot, but that's why he's so valuable because, if other guys are just rolling and scoring and we're doing things on the offensive end that are good, he kind of just takes that back seat, And so what's so impressive about his performance at Whitco was I think he sensed that some other guys were struggling just a little bit, offensively. And so he said, hey, let me give it a shot. And, and he has the capability of doing that for us. And so I think it's just a matter of getting guys reps in practice and then getting them experience too. There's nothing like getting varsity experience, in a varsity basketball game. You can talk about, first team reps and practice and all that stuff, but actually getting into the game and having that experience, the game moves faster. It's more intense. It's more physical than it would be in practice. And so experience is a key, trying to get those guys into varsity games and all those guys that I've talked about, we certainly have thought through or put them in games in situations where they can get experiences. And so they can start to understand and feel what it's like to get in there and actually participate on the big stage.
Coach, you've talked a lot this season about trying to improve on the defensive end. And when you look at the Whitco matchup, you're able to hold them to 37 points. So how did you like your defensive performance in that game?
Well, we've been experimenting with some different things, and we had a chance to kind of throw out the 1-3-1, half court stuff against Whitco. With our man-to-man, we felt like we had a tough matchup against Kroll, but we really wanted to take care of the other matchups, with some of their other players. And so we didn't overdo it, though. We didn't we knew that, they had trouble at times, handling the basketball. And so we were very patient in terms of our defensive approach, in terms of guarding them and making sure that we weren't trying to do things outside of who we normally are. We didn't try to press and trap to get them to turn the ball over. We just guarded them straight up and tried to slowly kind of drain them into, oh my gosh, we're down 10, 12, 15 points. And that's exactly what happened. You get into the fourth quarter, and we were in a situation where we were up 12 or 14 or something like that. And I think they kind of took a stab at trying to get the game back into single digits. And at that point, we kind of, ran away from them, by handling the basketball, making a few shots. And the final score probably wasn't completely indicative of how close that game was for a stretch there early in the fourth quarter. But we did a good job of keeping our poise, staying focused on what we were trying to do, and then eventually we ran away from them.
Coach, you're talking about the scoring and defense, but the rebounds that night were really good too. You had Robertson getting in there and getting rebounds, and Felger also fighting for rebounds, and actually Carson Smith as well getting in there and getting rebounds. So what can you say about the rebounds and how those players were getting those?
Well, it's something that against Whitco, really over the last 2 weeks, we've been doing a lot more rebounding drills and trying to make contact with some of our players. We're actually probably one of our biggest weaknesses is team-wise, is making sure that we make contact and going and getting those rebounds. Sometimes we rely on just our athletic ability or our size. Colin Robertson obviously is a big boy, and sometimes he just kind of goes up and gets those rebounds. It makes it look easy, but against better teams, especially as we saw last night, if we don't make contact with players, we have a hard time, getting rebounds. And Carson is athletic, and he's somebody that could actually lead us in rebounding if other guys do their job. If we clean out that lane and Carson can come through and get those rebounds, I think that can benefit us moving forward. But against Whitco, we just were a little bit bigger and a little more athletic than they were, and we were able to go get those rebounds. And the thing about rebounds that a lot of people don't know is that it's the beginning of the transition to the other end on offense. And so if you struggle rebounding the basketball, it's also going to hurt or kill your transition game. And so, when we struggle rebounding the basketball, it also hurts, the fact that we don't get to go out and, go on the other end and do our transition stuff. So rebounding certainly is a point of emphasis here over the last couple of weeks, and we'll be moving forward. We just need to do a better job of that.
That concludes our recap of Whitco. Coming up, we're going to discuss a little bit about last night's Warsaw matchup and what that means going forward. More Coach's Corner basketball show coming up on 93.7 FM The Mix and online at 937themix.com. Welcome back to the Coach's Corner basketball show on 93.7 FM The Mix and online at 937themix.com. I'm Grant Flora with Zach Bowen and head boys basketball coach John Everingham, and it's time to recap Warsaw from last night. So, Coach, to start off, you got down early, falling behind about 31-13 at the end of the half. But in the second half, you competed much better, only being outscored by 5. So how do you take what you were able to do in the second half and turn it into a consistent performance throughout the game?
Yeah, and I think it goes back probably even, further than that. We talk about, the week of practice that we had. We were really sharp all week, and we went with shorter practices. And if you remember kind of up leading up to that Whitco game, we had some sicknesses and some health issues, and we still had that kind of bleed into last night's game with some guys. Again, you saw Darius Lewis on the JV for the first time this season. Nolan Holzwarth's been nursing a hamstring injury there, and so we're just kind of coming out of some of that injury sickness phase, and I'm hoping that we are nearing the end on some of that stuff, but really felt like, the week of practice needed to be a little shorter, and we spent a lot of time talking about Warsaw. Actually, Monday, we were in there putting in some of the Warsaw plays that we knew we would see last night, and the JV's working on that end, and we started talking about our opponent probably a little earlier in the week than we normally would, and we kept practices a little shorter than what we have, leading up to this week, and I thought that was good. I thought we were energized, we were ready, we were prepared, we knew what they wanted to do, and we knew we wanted to do against that, and so I was very pleased with the way we practiced, all week long, and it seemed like we were ready, and so, it's difficult because I thought we were ready to go, and we talked about not coming out on our heels and really kind of forcing the action to Warsaw, and actually just the opposite happened. They come out on a 12-0 run. We got punched in the face, and we didn't respond very well. At the beginning of the game, it just felt like we were on our heels. We let them do whatever they want early in the game. But if you really take a look at, the score, after being down 12 right at the beginning, I think 12-0, I had to call a timeout. We come out and Zebarth hits a 3 on that possession just to get us on the board. And then, like you said, I think we were down 31-13 or something like that, so nearly 20 points. But, we're just not the type of a team. We hated being in that situation, but it is what it is. You can't rewind the clock, and you got to figure out how to deal with the situation that you're in. And I was very proud of our guys for not rolling over and just giving up. Certainly that's not part of our DNA. And we did make a bit of a run in that third quarter, and I felt like we played well enough offensively that we probably should have got back into like a single-digit deficit. But really the problems were on the defensive end more so than the offensive end. And so, you get off to a slow start, you put yourself in a big hole, and it's hard to kind of dig out of that hole. We certainly tried. We gave it a really good attempt to kind of get that into 8 to 10 point range where things could have got a little interesting, but we just couldn't stop them. It seemed like we would knock down a couple shots to get us within 12 or 10. And then they would come right down and 25, hit a 3 in the corner. Jackson Gould, hit a couple threes that were responses to us scoring on the other end. So I was really happy with the way we came out in the second half. We came out more aggressive, attacking the basket, getting good shots, and we needed to do that at the beginning of the game. And for whatever reason, I guess that's for me to figure out. We didn't come out at the beginning of the game like that, and I don't understand that, and it's something that we have to take a look at.
Coach, you're talking about the defensive struggles there a little bit. It seemed like no matter what you could do, you were scoring on the other end, then Warsaw would come right back down and score quick. So what do you want to improve on that, stopping future teams from doing that?
Yeah, well, first of all, Warsaw's good. They have all the positions filled, and they play in the 4A. They play in 4A sectional. Their schedule is one of the top schedules, I think, top 25 schedules in the state of Indiana. So they're battle tested. Jackson Gould is a guy that had 31 points against us last year, and Heckerman is another guy that is battle tested, and they're both really good players. They didn't start the game. Warsaw's been dealing with some sickness, throughout the week, and but once they got into the game, I don't remember them coming back out. So those two guys are game changers, and they control everything. Jackson Gould was able to control the tempo. When he had to, he pulled the ball back out, was getting his team where they needed to be. He was very poised in a couple points in the game where it seemed like we might be able to make a little bit of run, but then he would just knock down a big shot or make a big drive to the basket. Heckman, same way, where it just seemed like the key buckets and the key moments in the game came from their two seniors. They stepped up and made plays when they had to. They calmed their team down. They moved the basketball well. And, sometimes you tip your cap to the other team and you move on to the next day. But, certainly our inability to get those stops, when we had to, is a real concern for us. That we're playing defense right now and just hoping that they miss and getting rebounds. So when you don't rebound and then you're just hoping that they miss, we're not dictating what other teams are doing. They're dictating what they want to do on the offensive end. And again, I made the comment in the newspaper that, we almost look like the Washington Generals at time. That's the team that plays against the Harlem Globetrotters that just kind of follows the other team around and lets them do whatever they want, and so there's a physicalness to play on the defensive end that clearly we're just not up to par. We do have times when we've shown that we can do it, but we just don't do it consistent enough throughout the game.
Coach, one thing I noticed in that matchup was that Warsaw's length was causing some problems. Going forward, how can you try and get around teams that pose a similar threat?
Ball movement, that's the thing, is that they were trying to take away a few things for us with the dribble handoffs, and we were able to back cut them on several occasions. But when you back cut, you catch the ball, you feel like you're open, and then you got a 6'8" guy, moving towards you and either blocking a shot or whatever. So it's, when you break a defense down and you get a team to help, they send another defender over to help. That means that defender's leaving somebody, and so it's about spacing. It's about being in the right spot at the right time, and then it's about executing a pass to the open man. And so we were able to break down their defense on several occasions where we forced up shots when really the play was to pass it to an open teammate. And so that's not a situation where anybody's being selfish in any way, shape, or form. It's just the fact that we have not been able to prove that we can move the ball well enough when we break teams down. And so now, the good news is we're breaking teams down. Now we just got to get better spacing and better placement on the floor so that when we do break teams down, it's an easy pass to an open player. And then we can redrive from that and really get them into what we kind of have been calling like a washing machine, where you kick it out, that guy redrives, and you end up turning down a good shot for a great shot. And so we're still kind of learning that. We have players that are relying on, in the heat of the battle, some of the things they used to be good at instead of really working towards things that are going to get us a lot better. And it's about breaking down defenses and then moving the ball after that. And so I think we're going to continue to get better, but it may take a little bit of time for us to realize what that feels like.
Coach, I want to speak on Miles' performance there, open up the second half. He was finding open shots, and players were finding him open, and he was knocking down threes to start to cut in that lead. What can you say about that?
Yeah, how many points did he have last night?
He had 13.
13. I think they were all in the third quarter. If I'm not mistaken, They were all in the third quarter. And so, I thought he took some questionable shots in the first half, a couple off-balance shots, and was trying to do maybe just a little too much. But there was no question last night that there was one guy on our team really trying to hold it together and not just scoring, but emotionally trying to get guys to stick with it and stay together and trying to get the crowd into the game a little bit. But again, his performance in the third quarter should have been one that got us really pretty close, maybe 9, 8, 7 points. And our inability as a team to get it done on the defensive end didn't allow us to do that. So it was a special performance. You think about 13 points in a quarter. That's a lot of points in a quarter. And he came out, started attacking the basket. But again, it's not just about one player, because I thought, like Maddox, for example, shot fake, 2 dribbles into the paint and then kicked it out to him, which made his drive, Miles's drive, much easier on the weak side. And so it's like 5 guys working as one, and when we do that, we're a pretty dangerous offensive team. And sometimes you only see the guy who finishes the play by putting it in the hoop, right? But there's a lot more to it that happens prior to that. And so, yes, Miles hit a couple shots and certainly attacked the basket differently that he had been doing in the game. But there was a lot of other good things that were happening, prior to him putting it through the hoop.
Yeah, Warsaw had some spectacular performances last night. We already talked about Jackson Gould. He finished with 23 points. What are some things that Warsaw was able to do last night that maybe you want to do going forward?
Well, I think Coach Moore mentioned it, in the paper that it's ball movement. When you can move the ball from side to side and you're making the defense work as hard as they were making us work, they were making it look easy, the ball movement, from side to side. And then they'd break us down just on one drive and kick it out to a wide open shooter. The Bricker kid is a really good shooter, and he got several attempts, from 3 that were just flat out wide open. And you just don't see us get wide open threes all that often. Like when Zebarth or Maddox are getting open looks or Miles, even Carson, they're all guarded. They're all contested. And so what Warsaw was doing is they were breaking us down moving the basketball. I don't think they dribble the ball very much. I'm going to, after I get done talking here, I'm going to go watch that again and really look at how many dribbles they were taking in their possession. They weren't dribbling the ball a whole lot. And so if you did an experiment on speed, what you would find is that when you throw a ball from point A to point B, it's impossible to dribble a ball at the same speed from point A to point B. I don't know if that makes sense, but, if you dribble from one spot to another, it's faster to pass the ball, and so when you move the ball like they moved the ball and at the speed in which they did, it makes the defense rotate and you have to be pretty quick with your closeouts. And so when a team comes in and they move the ball like they did, it puts our defense in a very compromising position. For us on our end, what we were doing, we just got a little, I don't know if it was nerves or if we just got tight, we were dribbling a lot and we were making it too easy on them to guard us. And so it's about ball movement. It's about cutting. But there's so much more to moving the basketball from side to side because you also have to screen. You also have to cut. And that's what they did well, actually. Because of their screening and their cutting, they were able to move the ball with ease. And so those are the things that we're talking about doing as well. We got multiple options, scoring options. We talked about that in the last segment. If we can just move the ball and give open looks for others, again, our offense is just going to keep getting better and better.
Well, that concludes our recap of Warsaw. Coming up, we're going to discuss next week and what that entails, including a matchup at Columbia City and at Central Noble. Some more Coach's Corner basketball show coming up on 93.7 FM The Mix and online at 937themix.com. Welcome back to the Coach's Corner basketball show on 93.7 FM The Mix and online at 937themix.com. I'm Grant Flora here with Zach Bowen and basketball coach John Everingham. And now we're going to preview next week where Wawasee will travel to Columbia City on Tuesday and Central Noble on Wednesday. Coach, to start off, that's back-to-back road games against non-conference opponents. What does that mean for you?
Well, I think if you look down the road further with our schedule, let me get that pulled up real quick. But I think we go at Columbia City, at Central Noble. We do have our home tournament on the 30th, but then we got 3 road games in a row, a home game, and then 3 more road games. So this kind of starts the road stretch of our season, and then we finish up with 4 or 5 at home, which will be pretty nice. But we'll go through a stretch of road games, and so starting with Columbia City and Central Noble, it's always kind of weird with those games year in and year out because of Christmas break and how all of that kind of works out. And so Central Noble is one that we've moved kind of from one week to another just based on when the break is and when Christmas falls. And so this year we decided to go back-to-back, and it is 2 school nights too, and so that makes it a little tougher. We'll have to go to Columbia City, play a basketball game, get up, go to school, and then go on another road trip. So it'll be quite a 48-hour stretch, but certainly has potential to be pretty fun.
Coach, I wanted to bring this up last segment, but you were talking about Darius Lewis, and last night I seen him play some JV minutes, and he came in for a little bit during the varsity game. So my question is, before I get into detail with the Columbia City and Central Noble stuff, what do you expect from him in the future?
Well, we don't know yet. It was a good sign last night, but I have no idea how he feels this morning. He played some AAU basketball, broke his leg, and tried to battle through. Through some injury there, and may have, we don't know for sure, come back just a little too early and try to play some AAU and preseason stuff. And he's tried to gut it out, but he just hasn't been healthy with his leg. And so we kind of pushed the reset button, talked to his dad and his mom, and just said, hey, it's time to maybe take a couple weeks off and see if we can't get healthy. So he's been swimming in the pool. He's been doing his rehab with our trainer, Trevor. And I talked to his dad, I think 2 days ago, and said, hey, it's probably time. Let's just go and see what he can do on a JV game. And I was very pleased with the way he played. he's a competitive guy, and he's somebody that could help us at the varsity level. And so it's going to be interesting to see how it feels this morning. We had a couple guys with Nolan and his hamstring and Darius that played JV minutes. And if you guys were watching that JV game, it was a pretty heated contest, and it was very competitive. And so it's just going to be a matter of how it feels this morning. If it feels rotten and it feels terrible and he takes him another couple days to kind of get back to where he was prior to the Warsaw game, then we may not see him much till the holiday tourney. Or if it feels good today for whatever reason, we can go through rehab today. Maybe he'll get a chance to get in there on Tuesday, Wednesday in the varsity games and kind of see what he's got and what he can provide us. So it really depends on how he feels today. It's going to be a key for us.
Yeah, Darius Lewis, another one of those guys that could be an X factor down the stretch, like we were talking about against Whitco and Warsaw. But Columbia City is your next matchup, and they currently sit at 5-1, coming off, I believe, a double overtime win over East Noble last night. They're the only team they've lost to so far was Warsaw, who you just played last night. I know you probably haven't looked too much at the Eagles yet, but what stands out to you about that one?
Well, Andrew Hedrick, he's a 4-year starter. He's a guy that seems like he's been around forever, and he controls everything for him. And so I know a couple other guys have been leading scorers for him. I have watched some film on them, kind of getting ready for today and Monday. But he's their point guard. He can score. He can rebound. He's athletic. And he just controls everything for him. So, when the other guys are scoring, it's usually a direct result of him driving to the basket and kicking out to him. So I think it's worth talking about. Did you guys see that shot they hit against Carroll? It was on ESPN, and it was all over the news. Did you guys see that?
I think I did, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of recap that just a little bit, Columbia City was shooting a free throw. Actually, it was Hedrick that was shooting the free throw, and there was probably 2 seconds left, maybe 3, and he tried to miss on purpose because they were down 2. So he's trying to miss the free throw on purpose so they could tip it out and get a shot to try to tie. And he accidentally made it to cut it to 1. And Fort Wayne Carroll decided to throw the ball all the way to the other end to try to run the clock out because there's only a couple seconds left. And somehow a kid from Columbia City got his hands on it and literally dove forward and threw a chest pass. So it was like a dive. It wasn't even a shot attempt. It was a dive, and then he threw a chest pass at the basket. And it went in 3/4 court.
That's crazy.
For the win. And it was the very next day, it was on the front page of ESPN and one of the ESPN top 10 plays. And so those are plays you see once a decade, and they were the beneficiary of something like that. But there were a lot of things that happened in that game. I watched the whole game, and there were a lot of things that happened throughout the game that put it to that point. But everybody's going to remember that particular shot. And then they go last night, and I watched some highlights from that game from East Noble, triple overtime, 81-76, victory in triple overtime against East Noble. So. They're sitting at 5-1 right now with 2 huge wins. Both of them. One, the Carroll game was in overtime, and then the East Noble game in triple overtime. But they're averaging their offensive average 67 points a game, and so they got guys that can score, and it's going to be quite a challenge for us going over there to Columbia City on the road on a Tuesday night. They got a good team, and we keep. Putting these teams up in front of us that are really good. Central Noble on Wednesday is going to be pretty good too. So it doesn't get any easier for us, for sure.
Coach, after Columbia City of Central Noble, who last night had a tough battle against West Noble and lost to West Noble 58-54, and looking forward to Central Noble, what type of things do you expect out of them, and what do you hope to do against them?
Yeah, I mean, I know they're coached well. They obviously went to the state finals last year. And so, you take a look at some of our guys and what we've been talking about with experience, playing in a varsity game. Well, think about the battles that those guys have been through. Most all their guys, the Lemon kid and not Connor Sejan, but Connor's younger brother, Sam, has scored 15 points last night. They also got a move in from Cherubusco, their point guard, a lefty. His first name is Drew. I don't know his last name, but So they got a nice point guard. They got another guy that signed at Manchester University, and Drew Lemon. That's a nice scorer for them. And then Sam Asijan, probably 6'4", 6'5", who's a nice inside player. But they did lose Logan Gard. They lose Connor Asijan. Those two guys obviously were the keys to getting them down to the state final game. And I know Connor Asijan's having a pretty good season, a freshman season at Wisconsin. And so. But you take a look at the other guys that are coming back, and those guys are battle tested. They're proven to. They played in huge games, and they've been in big environments, and so again, that's going to be another really, really tough game for us going over to Central Noble. I will tell, for those of you who are listening, that schedule is a little different, and so it's a boys and girls doubleheader. Our JV game starts, I believe, at 5:00, and then both the boys and girls JV will play at 5:00 at the same time. And then the girls' varsity game will start at like 6:00. And then the boys' varsity will be after that at 7:30, 8:00. So it's a little different schedule for us. We'll send different buses over there. And again, it's a school day. So we got school on Wednesday. So it'll be interesting to see how our guys respond to road games during the week, especially back-to-back road games during the week, which is very uncommon.
Yeah, look at Central Noble with their matchup against West Noble last night. They just barely lost to West Noble by 4. You guys took West Noble to overtime. Logically, that kind of says it should be a close game on Wednesday night. So Central Noble, we talked about what they bring coming off a state finals run with some key guys returning. How do you find a way to get on top in that one?
Well, I'm not sure yet. I haven't watched much film, and to be honest with you, I think they play Tuesday night as well, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know who they play. I can check real quick here, but they play back-to-back nights, and so it'll be the same story for them. They probably won't know a ton about us, and we won't know a ton about them, so it's just a matter of going out there and just playing your hardest and trying to get better at what you do. So they play they play Bremen the night before they play us, and so they're on the same schedule, I'm sure. I don't know when their break is. Some guys, I don't know, West Noble, you guys are on break starting now.
Wednesday the 21st is our last day.
Okay.
But yeah, I know some schools are on break
Goshen.
now.
That's right. Goshen's last day was Friday, yesterday, and so they're on break. We're not on break for, Zach, another week, right?
Yeah.
Friday.
Friday we're on break.
Friday.
That's when break starts.
Yeah, so different schools got different schedules, and so I don't know about Central Noble being on break or not, but, for us, we will come back, and I think we'll talk about it next segment, but, we'll still be on break. It'll be a weird week for Northwood week, because we'll be on break all that week, when in the past that was our first week back of school. And so, so we'll have, again, it's very odd to have 2 road games during the week during school. And so if you think about the schedule, you go to school from 8 to 3, let's say, and the bus is going to leave about 4:30, so you got a short break right there. You get on the bus and you go to Columbia City. You're probably not going to get back till 10 or 11 o'clock. Wake up, you go to school, and then do the same thing again. And so, it makes it a little tougher, especially during finals week and getting ready for your finals. And so it's going to be a tough week for us, just in terms of the schedule, and we'll kind of see. It all comes down to, we're going to play a basketball game. It's not like we're traveling to Indianapolis or Louisville or something like that. So the road trips aren't that long, maybe 30, 35 minutes, so that should help. But I think we'll be fine in those 2 games.
So, Coach, I kind of want to bounce off some. We were talking about both of those teams. So in both of those games, what things do you hope to see transfer from past games and things to improve on from past games?
Yeah, we, some of our offensive concepts, we're getting closer, and so, but we continue to play tough teams. Every team on our schedule seems like they're tough, and we had a good game against Whitco, and certainly Whitco's not quite to the level. It's no slam on them, but it's just the truth. They're not quite to the same level as Manchester, West Noble, and Warsaw. Then we turn right around and play a 5-1, Columbia City team, and then a good Central Noble team. So it just doesn't get easy for us. But we're still doing some good things. And so I think offensively we're scoring some points. And I think when our ball movement gets a little bit better and we start turning good shots into great shots, you'll see us even be more efficient, offensively, more people scoring. And it really comes down to the defensive end. We have to see some immediate improvements on the defensive end. And you know what? Just to be honest, there may be some changes coming, and so those are things I don't know who and I don't know what position, and those are things that I'll sit down with the coaching staff, and we may need to see some other guys in there and seeing if they can perform on the defensive end as well. And so I think we got a handful of guys that have been waiting for an opportunity, and those are some things that you may see come Tuesday or Wednesday, just some changes.
So that concludes our preview of next week before Christmas break. Coming up, we'll discuss the second half of break, which includes the holiday tournament, the Northwood game, and the Homestead game. More Coach's Corner basketball show coming up on 93.7 FM The Mix and online at 937themix.com. Welcome back to the Coach's Corner basketball show. I'm Grant Flora, here with Zach Bowen and head basketball coach John Everingham. And we're going to take a look at Christmas break and what that entails for this basketball program. We look ahead. We have the holiday tournament on December 30th. Then on January 6th and 7th, back-to-back road games against Northwood and Homestead, two formidable opponents there. So, Coach, to start us off, we're going to look at the holiday tournament. Can you give us maybe a look at some of those teams that are playing and who you could be matched up with and maybe some of the schedule as well?
Yeah, sure. We have, obviously we're getting close to Christmas. Hopefully you guys are excited about that. It's a nice time to take a break and relax. And so we talked last segment about different schools and their break schedules. It just seems like different schools got different philosophies. Obviously with Christmas falling on Sunday this year, we still have 3 or 4 more days of practice of school next week, but then we go on a 2-week break there, and so which will include so we have Christmas on Sunday, and then that Friday we will have our holiday tournament on the 30th, and so we'll be able to take a few days off. We play, like we had talked about last segment, on the 20th and 21st, and then Christmas on Sunday, so we'll be able to take 2 or 3 days off both weeks and really kind of push the reset button with our energy levels and everything like that, and then start to get back into it on the 30th, which that tournament includes IHSA sanctioned team Trinity Greenlawn, and Woodland and Rochester, and so Woodland and Rochester are the same as last year, and Garrett was in our tournament and they dropped out, so we added a 1A school for us in the morning game at 10 o'clock, and then if we win that game, we'd play the winner of Rochester and Woodland. And so both teams have Woodland and Rochester have some pretty good players, and we met Woodland last year in the championship game and dropped a really close battle. A guy named Joe Leedy, who's now playing starting at St. Francis. I think we lost in overtime last year. So we really started to turn the corner, last year around Christmas time, and hoping that maybe we can do something like that again this year. But again, we talked about our schedule. It doesn't get any easier. We got the holiday schedule and a game that we're maybe favored in with Trinity Greenlawn, but then every other game that we play, and including at the end of the break with Homestead and Northwood, are two of the best teams in the state of Indiana. So it doesn't get much easier, but we'll take it one game at a time and try to get a little rest over Christmas break and really enjoy each other first and foremost, and then play in the holiday tournament on the 30th.
Coach, the holiday tournament is obviously preparing you for future things, because if you do win, either way, win or lose, you have 2 games that day. So what can you say about mentally preparing players for that, 2 games in the same day?
Well, it's not what it used to be, honestly, because our guys have played so much basketball. They're used to playing 3 or 4 games in one day. Summer basketball has changed, AAU basketball has changed, and so the preparation for the teams is not what it normally would be. Like if you're playing like this week, we prepared for Warsaw. Sometimes in tournaments where you play 2 games in one day, it's like the best team wins most of the time because the other team doesn't get a chance to prepare and for the upset or whatever. So, but our guys will be energetic enough. We may use a few extra guys off the bench, in that morning game to save some energy. But back in the olden days, you play on Friday and Saturday night, and that was it. You get the whole week to rest and prepare. But with AAU and some of the other things that are going on, you play so many games in one day. Guys are kind of used to, playing that many games in one day. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal for us, and probably the other teams are in the same boat. So, but it's less about preparation and more about your team. So you're focusing more on yourself than you are the other team and what they do. And with Warsaw, we knew their out of bounds plays, we knew their sets, and we knew the personnel very well. We knew the matchups. When so and so reported into the game, who was going to switch the matchups, and we were really dialed in on the game plan. But when you go into a holiday tournament like that, that's not going to be the case. It's going to be like, oh, that guy hit 3 threes. Well, we better put that guy on him. And so you make more in-game adjustments than you would in a normal game like last night.
So, Coach, then after the holiday tournament, you have a Friday night matchup at Northwood, and that's a huge game. It's an NLC matchup, but also a sectional matchup. Northwood ranked very high in the state. I believe last time I checked, 13th in the regardless of class poll. They have a lot of really good players, including like Cade Brenner, Ian Rosh. So, Northwood, how big is a game is that for you?
Well, we played in that environment. Last year we played them pretty tight. In both the games that we played against them, we had moments where you thought maybe we could hang in there and win one. But they're good. They're deep too. JJ Payne off the bench, and I just was watching them yesterday a little bit, and a kid number 30 off the bench. I don't even know his name yet, but that's something we'll continue to kind of watch their progress and who they're bringing off the bench, and of course they're led by Brenner. Who's a kid that I believe has signed to go to Indiana Wesleyan, along with Jackson Gould. So he's a collegiate player. And Ian Roush is one that it's not a question of if he's a college player, it's what level, So is he a D2 guy, NAIA, or higher? You don't know, because I think his potential, he plays on the Indiana Elite, AAU team, which is one of the top AAU teams in the state. So, along with his younger brother's a sophomore, I think 6'7" or 6'8". So they're going 6'7", 6'8", across their front line with Bontrager, who's a nice role player. He's about 6'1" or 6'2", returner from last year, maybe a 3-year starter. Brenner, 3-4-year starter. Roush. So they're just absolutely blowing people out, and we know that Fairfield is probably at about the same level as we are, and Fairfield finds himself down, I think, 27-0. And if you hear me correctly, I said 27-0. They start off the game against Fairfield 27-0. The game in the third quarter was 50-15. And that's no slam on Fairfield or Northwood. Northwood's not trying to run. They got to do what they got to do to get better, and they're just really powerful. And so we're going to have to be on point with our game plan and know exactly who they are and what we want to accomplish, or, we could fall victim like that. But it was what I will remind people, and I'll remind you guys, that last year was almost the exact same story. They were just blowing people out early, and people started kind of getting some game plan around how you could, potentially slow them down just a little bit. And so that'll be the case this year. Is I'll watch every possession that they play, every game. Every shot that Brenner takes. So we'll find out what sort of game plan may help us keep that game within striking distance. So it's good. It's fun. I like playing Northwood. If you want to be the best, you want to beat the best. And so right now they're ranked number 3. They've been ranked number 1. They got the same team back from last year. They certainly have aspirations of moving on further than where they've been in the past, with the regional. But they got West Noble, who's ranked number 7 right now. They certainly have their eyes kind of peeled and keeping paying attention to what we're doing as well. And so they're going to have to win the sectional first before they can even think about, going on to the regional and winning there. So But they're good, man. They're really good.
Coach, right after that Northwood game, you have Homestead, who is ranked third in the Max Preps 4A rankings for Indiana. So what can you say about that matchup? That's another huge matchup right after Northwood.
Yeah, they got a kid named Leaper that's just signed to play football at Iowa, tight end. He's 6'7", and he can jump really, like almost, I think almost honestly, legitimately through the roof. He's a high flyer. He's an exciting player to watch. But they got a nice core around him too, with pretty good guards. They play extremely hard. I've coached against Coach Johnson, in the past, and he just gets his teams to play really, really hard defensively. So they're in your face, and those are the things that we struggle with. And so what we're really trying to do with the schedule is to put our guys in really uncomfortable situations that hopefully we can learn from. And so the tougher your schedule is, the more prepared you are when you go down the stretch, playing some of those teams. So if we can keep that mindset, we're probably not going to win all of those games against all these tough teams that we're playing. Clearly, we haven't so far. But what we will do, and I'm telling you, we will do this, is we'll find something in there, and something in there that's going to make our basketball team really successful. And my hope is that we find something, we build upon it, and we're going to be an awfully good team when we need to be. And so that's kind of the goal of what I'll be talking to the team about, and why we're playing some of these tough teams.
Yeah, you look at your schedule, you're playing the likes of Northwood and Homestead. By the time you get to sectional, you'll still have Northwood, but after that, you have some smaller schools. So this is really going to help get you playing at a level that's higher than what you may see in the sectional, which will help you to ultimately get those wins in the postseason.
Yeah, and there's a dream of a big picture too, and certainly with our youth, coming back for next year, and some of the things that we think we can do over the next 2 or 3 years, that we have to do this. We have to start the process of strengthening our schedule and really try to put ourselves in positions where we compete, not just in the sectional, but maybe beyond. And so I think as you look at programs that are taking steps, going to the next level, these are the things that they're doing. So coaches, from time to time will think about their teams, and they'll think about the future, the next 2 or 3 years. And if you really think that you can be pretty good, which we do, you have to strengthen your schedule. That's the only way you can make a deep run in the tournament. And so that's kind of what we're doing. This year it's, we may take our lumps just a little bit, but what we're hoping is that we're putting our guys in positions where they understand what level they have to get to. It's either going to make you work harder or quit. And so I don't think there's any quit in our guys, and they may be working out this summer going, man, there's good players out there everywhere, whether it be Fort Wayne and Homestead or in the NLC conference, and maybe they work harder and maybe they get better, and maybe that pushes them and drives them to be better because they're playing against better competition. And so that is the idea behind it, that we're strengthening our schedule. We're putting guys in positions where they're playing against really good players. And what you're going to find is that we're going to have some success doing that, and we're going to take it and run with it for the remainder of this season, and then maybe on into the summer next year.
Coach, I have one more question for you. Last night, tipped off NLC player. Were there any big-time NLC scores that stood out to you last night?
I think it went chalk. It was like it kind of went as expected. Northwood ran past Plymouth, I think 54-30. Northridge and Goshen play tonight. That should be an awfully good game. Goshen is a little inconsistent but scary. They've had some big wins, and Northridge, I think, is creeping into the rankings. I think it's 7-1 or 6-1 or something like that. So Northridge is a sneaky good basketball team, and so Mishawaka beat Concord by 20 or whatever. So you got a 20-point victory from Warsaw, 20-point victory from Northwood, 20-point victory from Mishawaka. And so you're starting to see the cream of the crop rise to the top. And so if Northridge beats Goshen tonight, that's probably what people would predict would be the top 4 teams in our conference. And so that's why I said it goes chalk. It's just like what you probably would think. So we're looking forward to getting a chance to compete against those teams, Northwood and Mishawaka and Northridge. The bigger schools, they're 4A schools, I think all of those except for Northwood. And it's always nice to kind of compete against those big schools and get that experience.
Well, thanks for coming in this morning, Coach. The Warriors will be back in action on Tuesday at Columbia City, and Zach and I will see you then. That concludes the Coach's Corner basketball show this morning on 93.7 FM The Mix and online at 937themix.com.